that when I spoke to you previously, I know that you are running your own lab. I think it's a Newtown laboratory. Am I right? Just correct me.
I'm running. I'm running the clinical trial center at Lakeview Hospital in Benoni.
Have I got my Mithas wrong?
Got your Mithas wrong, yeah.
Is that your brother, by the way?
You're speaking to my cousin Ismail Mitha, who is at the Newtown Clinical Trial Center. Yeah,
okay.
He was involved in the Pfizer clinical trials, and I'm involved in the Johnson & Johnson.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful to know that you as the Mitha family are so focused on something that's truly, truly close to all of our hearts, and obviously to make not only South Africa, but the rest of the world healthy, or to protect us from this terrible scourge, this pandemic, the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your center.
Well, look, basically, Julie, I've been involved in clinical research for almost 20 years now. I've been running that particular clinical trial unit since, I think, just after 2000. And have been involved in that hospital as well. And so I've been pretty much involved in clinical research and hospital management development for a while now. And I've always been in this value add space, providing affordable healthcare. Also been involved with the Prime Cure group of clinics. That was basically a one-stop health shop in the township. And we've got several of those clinics running as well. So, I've been pretty much in the healthcare space for a long time, 20 years. But
Alhamdulillah.
It's been obviously the focus.
Alhamdulillah, it's very heartening to know that there are people like yourself out there taking care of the interests of our futures, protecting us from all sorts of pandemics, epidemics, and so forth. But did you see this coming? Did you see COVID-19 coming? Or is this something, are you in a space where you kind of almost work to prevent such a scenario?
I can tell you, I don't think anybody could have seen it coming. Nobody could have ever predicted this. And I think no economist or strategist could have ever predicted the world to have changed the way it has with the pandemic. So I think it's taken us all by storm. Yes, I must tell you that in the clinical trial circle, there's been talk. I'm involved in a number of influenza vaccine trials, or I've been involved over the years, and there has been talk of a flu pandemic. And it's not something that is a conspiracy theory. There has been talk of you attend all these congresses around the world and stuff like that, and they mention at every flu investigator meeting or flu study investigator meeting, you would find them talking of a potential flu pandemic, right? That the flu virus was getting cleverer, and there would be a time when it would become a little bit more dangerous than it has been over the last few years. So, you know what? There has been sort of discussion about a possible pandemic, but no one ever expected. I don't think anybody could have ever been prepared.
All right, let me ask you this question. Inshallah, if the situation changes and we get to what is normal, hopefully, we get past this pandemic, is that possible? Will we be able to? Question number one. Question number two, is it still advisable? Flu season is around the corner here in South Africa. So would you still urge people, whether we have the COVID-19 vaccine rolling out or not, still go ahead and get your flu jab? Your thoughts?
Look, my thinking there would be obviously you need to still keep your immune system healthy. So obviously exercise, daily, employing all the hygiene measures, and at the same time taking the vitamins and supplements. I mean, you don't have to take everything that's on the shelf. Vitamin C, vitamin D, things. I don't think it's necessary for us.
What about ivermectin? Couldn't help throwing that one at you.
Look, yeah, I knew you would get there, but the thing is, look, I think you and I had a chat about it early on in January, and I told you, look, my experience with ivermectin wasn't great, and the thing, if you take the general population and the statistics of COVID-19 and affecting the general population, you would get still close on to 90% patients who would recover, right, without hospitalization. So it's that between 5 and 10% who complicate, right? And those statistics still remain pretty much the same. So if you look at ivermectin, I mean, it's not doing anything great. It's not your silver bullet. It's not the cure. And I think the science, there hasn't been sufficient evidence. And I think what's going to happen is that the science will prove us right or wrong. In my opinion, I don't think ivermectin is the cure. But you know what? I think if we have data that supports it, and the studies are ongoing currently. So fortunately now, for the first time, guys are actually doing proper structured clinical research with ivermectin. You see, you can't exactly say ivermectin works when you're not using it in a proper clinical trial context. So you need to actually say, okay, fine. You know what? One half of your population with COVID-19 needs to get ivermectin and standard of care. And then the other half of the population that you're treating needs to get, say, standard of care alone. And then you need to actually prove that the ivermectin with standard of care, because it would be unethical for you not to give what we know works. All right? So we know the cortisone definitely works. We know that oxygen therapy definitely works. Right? We know that certain antibiotics are indicated at certain time points in the disease. So you can't withhold what we call standard of care because it would be unethical, right? But yes, what you design a study which basically states that half the subjects get ivermectin plus standard of care, and the other half get standard of care alone. And essentially, if you can prove benefit, that the group that has got ivermectin did better than the group that's got standard of care only, right? Then you can start to make or draw a conclusion that there is some benefit to using ivermectin. And then you can go on, because nobody's actually assessing side effects. And nobody's actually monitoring the patients who take the ivermectin. So it's been really, and the world is desperate for a solution. So you know what, you don't blame people, but you know what, as a clinical researcher, I'm definitely not in support of people using ivermectin without supervision and without being monitored. And certainly, I'm not convinced about the evidence. So I'd just like to mention, in a small cohort of about 10 patients, all of them who received ivermectin, all of them experienced progression of the COVID-19 symptoms. They got worse. Some got hospital. Yeah, some went to hospital. So out of 10, I'm just giving you a small cohort of patients, right? Small cohort, 10 patients, all progress. So I'm talking about now my personal experience. One patient, we talk about ivermectin preventing, preventing developing COVID or being sort of protection, right? It doesn't do that because, I've had patients who've taken it prophylactically and still developed COVID.
So, what about it lessening the severity, Dr. Mitha? What about taking ivermectin as a prophylaxis and then it helps prevent the severity of the illness?
I must be honest. The thing is, again, and I speak from my personal experience, what I've seen, ivermectin hasn't Those patients that progress will progress. Those patients that go to, it hasn't saved those patients from going to hospital. It hasn't saved some patients. We know a lot of patients who passed away in the last month who were on ivermectin. So, what I'm saying is it's really not that silver bullet. I don't believe, but yes, we need to study it. There may be some merit. Other doctors are supposedly experiencing successes. And I think, but what would happen is once you've got a structured clinical trial, you can evaluate the data better. You understand?
Okay. Yet there are healthcare professionals who swear by it. They believe that it is that silver bullet.
I think you know what? This is why I'm saying it's not evaluated consistently in a structured manner. So if you take 85 to 90% of the population are going to get better. It's that 10% that we are trying to solve for.
Okay.
You understand? 85% or 90% of the population is going to get better with very little support. You understand? So it's about actually getting into a structured clinical trial. Once you've got that, you can actually make that decision.
All right. So now let's talk about the vaccines. Just before the AstraZeneca vaccines arrived in South Africa, don't even talk about the amazing reception that was meted out. I mean, there was a convoy of 20 or 30, those black SUVs, and there was really a VIP rollout for these vaccines, only to be told, I mean, at the time as well, the president suggested that there's going to be a 2-week wait to test the integrity of the vaccine. Now, I have a problem with that. Surely, if the country is getting in vaccines from elsewhere, perhaps the idea is to send a specialist from South Africa to go over to the country where we're sourcing the vaccines from and perhaps do the integrity checks over there and say, yes, this will work in South Africa, and then bring it in immediately. I kind of got a sense that there already seemed to have been suspicion around the integrity. It was almost as if we were prepared for some form of disappointment or failure as far as these batch of vaccines were concerned.
Look, I have to agree. Look, obviously, we're not entirely sure how the procurement was managed or what discussions were had, in the background. But yes, I mean, I would imagine that there's something that should have been done. But I suppose, look, this is going to be a dynamic environment. People are not going to know. In terms of vaccine efficacy, those things are going to be changing all the time, because as clinical trials start to produce results and as we start to analyze, we are going to be faced with this kind of disappointment. I mean, if we were in the South African context in September 2020, the Oxford vaccine was showing fantastic efficacy. But against the new South African, so at that time, it would have been probably the vaccine of choice. But obviously, having experienced the second wave and South Africa producing a new mutation, that vaccine is no longer as effective as it's been shown worldwide in the initial studies. So you know what, we're gonna face the change in the.
I'm losing you there. Yeah, just to repeat. Yeah, I can hear you now. Please continue.
Yeah, I'm saying that this virus is a changing virus. It's mutating, it's getting cleverer. So, you know what, the science and the technology needs to keep pace with that. So, whereas the AstraZeneca vaccine at the time was probably an effective vaccine and it was an appropriate vaccine, it no longer is. So, especially in the South African context. So I'm saying, you know what, difficult, but yes, I think government did drag its feet in getting the vaccines, and yes, the procurement process, I think, could have been a lot better. But again, I can't speak. We don't know all the facts, so it's incredibly difficult to make any.
All right. Now, Dr. Mitha, what about? I imagine all vaccines have expiry dates, and I'm wondering just how small the window of the expiry date is. What's going to happen with these the AstraZeneca vaccines? Would it not be perhaps a good idea to vaccinate the population instead of dumping them or possibly sending them back to where they came from? Because there's obviously lots of money involved here. In your mind, would it not be common sense or good practice to start vaccinating frontline workers, and as soon as we have the Johnson & Johnson vaccines to hand, then give them a second dose? Would that be harmful to the health, or would that be kind of just being extra cautious and good common sense?
Yeah, look, I think it may be a good idea for us to actually achieve some kind of immunity and move towards what we are wanting to achieve long term. Our long term goal is herd immunity, right?
Absolutely.
If we utilize the AstraZeneca vaccine, it's here. It does provide some protection.
Do we know what percentage of protection?
Look, against the South African, the new mutation, right? The new mutation, they're saying it's about 22% effective, and the guidelines are that, you need to have 50% efficacy for us to actually make it worthwhile to use. So, at the moment, I must be honest, you have the scientific advisory board all debating as to whether to use it or not. And I'm inclined to thinking, what will happen is that more than likely here we should actually use the vaccine and achieve remember, prior to the second wave and prior to the finding of the mutation, right? The South African mutation.
Right.
This vaccine was touted to be about 90% effective. 90%.
Yes.
So I think, it's something that will be debated, and I'm pretty sure that we will get some kind of guidance coming out of the scientific advisory board, and the guys will probably. My thinking is that we'll probably lean towards using it, right? And it's all going to depend on whether we can get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine available for rollout as early as next week or end of February. And there the studies on that particular study. Look, I'm involved in that particular study. So the results have been very encouraging in the single dose phase 3 study, which concluded in December, right? It concluded and with a 57% efficacy against the new mutation in the South African state, and an 85% efficacy against the severe form of the disease. So we're doing the 2-dose study. So I'm hopeful and expecting that the 2-dose study will produce a higher efficacy, stronger immunity, all right? Because all other vaccines, every other vaccine has had 2 doses and has produced, obviously, 95% efficacy. So, our counterpart, the Pfizer vaccine, produced 95% efficacy, but that's on 2 doses. So Johnson & Johnson is proving to be very, very potentially a very good vaccine. And so I think, we're hopeful, and I think the results from the 2-dose study are going to be definitely a lot better than the single dose.
Okay,
So,
so let me ask you.
and
Obviously, it's going.
another plus,
Yes.
another big
Okay.
plus is that, we've been told that Aspen Pharmaceuticals are going to be manufacturing the Johnson and Johnson vaccine in South Africa.
Oh wow.
So,
Yes.
what this would, yeah. So I think we're going to probably be able to get our hands on it sooner. And yeah, so I'm hopeful that this could work out and be a sort of a solution for the current crisis that we're in, especially with the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine.
Right. Now, let me ask you, why do we, there seems to be reluctance. Well, you have the two camps. I'm in the camp that, I can't wait. I'll be first in line to get my vaccine. And then yet you have other people who are totally against it. There's the DNA story, the story about it impacting or changing your DNA. And then there's the whole 5G theory,
And that,
conspiracy theory around that.
yeah, look, you're going
And
to always,
and then there's also, yeah.
theories.
So for a whole, and then there are those theorists as well who believe that no one can produce an effective enough vaccine in such a short space of time. So those lots of different conspiracies going around. But having said that, I'm still going to be first in line to get my vaccine. But why go the and because of these people and also spreading a lot of fake news and fake theories, why go the 2-dose route? What's the thinking behind that? Wouldn't it be more cost effective and time effective to work on a single dose so that people can just get it over and done with and move on?
Look, I think that is the idea, and that's probably the reason why you're getting, Johnson and Johnson trying to produce a single dose vaccine. But obviously, the efficacy is going to dictate whether you need a second shot or not. So, and I think obviously what we're trying to do, because this is a virus that is mutating and changing its form, there's always little tweaks that need to happen. And that's probably the reason why you need to have that second dose. So I've also been contacted by another company in the U.S. manufacturing a new technology, which is combining the technology that exists currently into one vaccine, right? So they are probably in the region of about 207 vaccines being produced.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what? The idea is, we're going to have to probably wait for all the clinical trials, and this is something that's going to be a dynamic environment. So today, J&J may be the vaccine of choice. Tomorrow it may not be, because the virus may have mutated and decided, I'm going to beat this vaccine. So it's about keeping in keeping pace with the change. It's going to be difficult, and I think we're quite a long way from actually the pandemic sort of being coming to an end. If anything, we're going to be probably having COVID-19 being endemic in most countries. So you're going to have probably, once the large-scale vaccination programs have taken place, what's going to happen is more than likely you're going to get a slow trickle of COVID cases. It's going to become endemic. It's going to probably be like the flu every year. But hopefully, with the vaccination programs and us achieving herd immunity, what's going to probably happen is that, it will become a milder version and a more manageable version.
Okay. So what?
In a lot of COVID treatment trials, right? So we are hospitalizing patients and using various monoclonal antibodies. These are new treatments, and those are promising as well. So you know what? At the moment, the clinical research environment is basically trying to. There's a race on to find the cure, to find a vaccine, and basically to find a treatment that can actually let's say cure the virus or cure the illness within a short space of time without you having to progress to a ventilator or being hospitalized, because the outcomes on that, obviously we've seen pretty poor.
Okay, Dr. Mitha, let me ask you this question. We are coming to the end of the interview, but we're hearing more and more cases of even babies presenting with COVID. Are these vaccines going to be administered to children, to toddlers? Because I think we're all becoming rather nervous about COVID now spreading in an age group that we didn't expect it to spread to.
Yeah. Look, again, there's no correct answer, but what we've seen from our experience in speaking to a number of pediatricians is that COVID doesn't affect the children the way it affects the adults, and they don't tend to develop a severe form of disease or the COVID pneumonias with scarring and fibrous tissue and residual lung symptoms. So they tend to have it more like a flu, with the symptoms for maybe a day or two, and rarely does it ever progress. But having said that, we are doing a study which is coming up with which is actually hopefully going to answer those kind of questions. We're going to be giving pregnant women, right, between the gestational ages of 28 to 32 weeks, we're going to give them the vaccine, all right, and hope that there would be maternal transfer of antibodies to the newborn. And then we'll be measuring those antibodies, the COVID antibodies, in the newborn, and seeing whether giving a pregnant woman the vaccine early on renders the child immune to COVID. So that way, you're actually looking to produce a healthy newborn population of COVID-free babies or COVID-free population. So it's a landmark study, and I think it's going to actually be done worldwide, and I think that's something to look forward to as well.
Dr. Ismail Mitha, thank you indeed for being with us on the show this morning. You certainly have given me, you've allayed a lot of my fears. And like I've said, can't wait for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine to be rolled out. How soon do you think we can expect to have it?
Look, I'm pretty sure for those who are participating in the clinical trials, there's already a discussion with regards to unblinding the study. So those who were given placebo will be crossed over to the actual vaccine, right? So within the clinical trial program, we're hopeful that SAHPRA will give us approval, and there has been a formal application to roll out the vaccine with SAHPRA. So I think that's imminent within the next 2 weeks for our, let's say, frontline workers and healthcare workers, that the vaccine will be available. So they're talking about as early as next week. So, look, it's obviously on an expedited approval application. So, we're hoping that, this rollout happens before the end of February.
Inshallah. Wonderful talking to you. And please keep us updated as new developments come about as far as the disease and the vaccines and treatment options become available. Jazakallah.
We would... Right.
No, carry on. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing. I was speaking to a group of nurses who are young and don't remember or who can't remember that 20 years ago we used to give at birth about 6 vaccines. And it was an injection in the right side, the left side, the BCG in the left arm, and the right arm you had the hepatitis or Haemophilus influenza, and you had the polio drops, and the child was crying. And while the child was crying, we were trying to squeeze these drops. These were the first vaccines. So the child went home, but the injection in the right side, left arm, plus fluttering and kicking. And we did a study at that time, and we got a lot of, again, resistance. It was a 6-in-1 vaccine. It was combining all the vaccines, putting it all into one. And there was a lot of resistance, and everybody was saying against, was speaking out against vaccination and all these type of things. And guess what? today these young nurses don't even remember their time, right? And they're saying it's so common because now they're used to using the 6-in-1 vaccine. Just one jab and they've got everything, right? Then I reminded, while I was talking to them, I said, guys, have you guys seen any polio patients? I said, when I started practice in 1997, I used to see polio. I used to see many patients coming in with polio. These deformed limbs and wearing braces and calipers on their legs to support their limbs. I said, do you guys see that? They said, no. I said, do you guys see measles much? No. And these were nurses that are in community clinics, right? I said, do you guys see chickenpox a lot? I said, when I started practice, we used to see a lot of chickenpox, see a lot of measles, see a lot of polio at the time, but we don't see it anymore. Why do you think that is? Because of the vaccination program. So obviously vaccines are there to produce long-term results, to eradicate disease and to create a healthy population going forward. So every now and then we're going to be challenged, and this pandemic is challenging us. But once the vaccines are successful and we start to roll out, you're going to see that, this thing will hopefully be a thing of the past.
Inshallah, Ameen. Jazakallah for being with us on the show. Talk to you soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Right. Assalamu alaikum.
Connect and stay ahead with